Let's get on. Where I live's like 5 minutes from the beach.
I think there's enough of us to start the conversation. So what do you reckon, Amanda? Shall we crack on? I think we could.
Sure.
Yeah, all right. So as you know, we have discussed it so many times that we thought that this session, that we have to create a specific session for this particular subject. So today we'll be focusing on personalization and print. David, hello.
Hello. Sorry I'm late.
No, that's fine. Amanda kindly agreed to pick it up because she's well known in the industry and she knows about personalization pretty much everything. So yeah, Amanda, you want to kick off?
All right, thank you. I wanted to thank Milo and Calvin and VPress for having me host today. If you guys know, I've been in the pub for a little while now, and I am a sales executive for Heater Print out of Canonsburg, Pennsylvania. A little bit of my background is this is my 23rd year in the print industry, starting way back in my dad's old screen print shop. And then I kind of worked my way through doing a little bit of everything, got a degree in printing management and printing technology. I was a pressman on a couple offset presses, web presses, digital presses. I actually got to work for the United States Supreme Court as a publications officer for a while, and I ran my own implant operation here in Pennsylvania for UPMC, which is a large health insurance network. And then I decided let's try the fun world of sales. So that's kind of where I ended up. But so right now we definitely wanted to talk about personalization. If you guys have seen any of my videos, right now, especially during the whole COVID, where it seems like everyone's mailbox is empty, I know my company really wanted to focus on personalization and getting people's names out there, especially with all the changes happening for all the different businesses and all the different regulations that people have to uphold now. And, we figured what's the best, what a better way than to get something personalized out there to tell your customers exactly what's happening. So I was talking to Kelvin and Milo, and it's kind of interesting to see the difference between, what we have here in the States and what's out there in the UK towards personalization. So I wanted to start off the conversation with, how do you guys define personalization coming from your print shop or coming from your part of the world versus what we see everywhere else? So I know, Kelvin, we had a good discussion about how it's a little different between here and the UK, and if you wanted to kick that off with what we were discussing before.
Sorry, sorry, Amanda, I couldn't hear there because we just had to put Andrew on mute. So apologies for that. It's fixed now. We had a small technical issue there. Sorry, could you ask that again? Sorry.
I said I just wanted to see if you could kick off with what me and you were talking about earlier this week about how there seems to be a difference between what personalization is in the UK versus what we have out here in the States.
Yeah, so in our limited experience, personalization here in the UK is a little bit more advanced in print to what is on offer in the States. Don't shoot me, I'm just making a comment from a bit of experience. We're pretty well versed with the oncoming of digital on personalization to the masses. So what you class as personalization, I think, is quite a lot more sophisticated. And I'm open to be proved otherwise to what's available in the US. The US is quite an the UK is quite an automated market, and personalization has been a key driver. It's one of the reasons why here at VPress we're super busy. But open to hear how other people can challenge that, especially the people your side of the water, Amanda, if anyone's got a comment. Warren?
Warren's a Canadian. You can't listen to him. Jeez. Come on. Stick with the things here.
He's out chasing bears.
The guy doesn't have any hair either, which is, I won't make a comment about that. Kelvin, it really depends on the sophistication of the shop. There's a lot of them. In the case of Heater, I'm pretty familiar with those guys. They do it. They're an advanced shop that has all the capabilities you'd find anywhere else in the country. So, like a lot of stuff, making a generalization about a large group of businesses is kind of tough. you can find enough data points to make your point, whatever that is. So that said, I mean, you're right and you're wrong, depending on what you're looking at, I suppose.
I'm so open to it. So I went to a D Scoop and there was a lady there talking about personalisation of postcards, and everyone was really excited about it, but there wasn't really any personalisation. The personalisation was done on press back at the shop, you know. So whereas here, we would personalise it on a web browser or at the customers. So.
Yeah, you know, excellent point. I guess, you know, first question is define personalization, right? That's a different thing to everyone. And your idea of that might be totally different. I mean, the most fundamental fact and kind of how they teach people in the States, which is a huge mistake, is that the address block is a personalized element. It's different on every piece, right? So it could be limited to that. Is that personalization? I don't think so. And it's sure as hell isn't what you're talking about, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, no, I agree. Anyone else comment on that?
Well, I was just going to
Jason,
say,
please.
define
So,
personalization.
sorry, Steve. I'm Jason, and I'll come back to you, Steve, in a second.
Sorry, I think the comment I was going to make is it's all about the data that you've got. So personalization did go from an address to printing a name saying "Dear Jason" to having that level of information, which was correct. And a lot, I think, in history tells us is that a lot of that information, those mailing lists, half of it was a waste of time. I think now it's the challenge is have you got the right data? Has it been cleansed? Is it relevant? And is it relevant right now to that person? And that's the challenge. And I think people who have very rich data who control it or have the systems where they can get that call to action and react very quickly and send a mail piece out that's relevant is pretty much where people are. But I think even today, people struggle with the data, where they've got it from, GDPR, can we use it, can't we use it? So there's lots of things out there that hold back what we can do with print. Even in transactional mail is the same issue. Banks, building societies, insurance companies can't share data between systems. So I think it's the restrictions that we have on data, not necessarily around the technology, but I suppose it's how can you get to a point where you can either share data or use it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Steve, you wanted to mention something.
The reason I said just now, define personalization is the point being that you guys just said, you know, sending out direct mail with your name on, dear Fred or whatever, instead of dear sir. That's personalization to a degree, but my kind of, let's say, ambition with personalization would be, you buy a bottle of whiskey and it's got your name on it. So that product has been made for you with obviously some sophisticated software, which enables that box to have your name gold foiled on it or whatever as a gift. That is absolute personalisation. Sending a letter out
And
seems not to be personalisation. Nothing around anyway.
beyond that, Steve,
Top?
there's a new there's actually a thing called What's Your Whiskey now, where they do exactly that, and you type in the sort of flavours or the peatiness you like. It's not just a case of what's your name and address. That's not personalisation. It's it's a unique promotion, and it's stuff beyond that. So your tastes, your colours, they can give you a voucher or an offer that's just for you. We've got to get way beyond. The data has to be unique, and the promo has to be personal. We've got to get way beyond just name and address and that basic stuff. And you're right, and it's things like e-commerce and things like that, and what data they store on you and how they store it.
Well, that's no different than what it is in the States. I mean, it's, you know, essentially identifying what the target is interested in and, you know, serving up something that's relevant. And it's true with email as well. I mean, there's no difference really in that other than the, you know, tactile approach with print. So I don't see that there's any different in the promotion or marketing profiles that need to be done. But getting that data, somebody had said earlier that getting the data was the challenge in the UK, if I understood that correctly. There are retail outlets here that have totally depended upon it. I did a project with Pottery Barn and Panera Breads and Home Depot, that all of which had databases that were frankly designed to be able to do this kind of thing. So that part was relatively easy. And then the hard part was, of course, the marketing messaging, which is, usually not part of what the printer provides.
Thank you, Robert. Andrew?
Yeah, I was just going to say, Heinz are actually doing baked beans and different products with your names on them. But equally, I went years ago on an Indigo marketing kind of course. They were trying to show us what capabilities, essentially, what could be printed via the Indigo system. And the way that they were marketing it was saying that generally, personalisation is anything, in the sense that, and the example that they used was a car showroom. A car showroom would know their clients, they know what car they've had, they know the registration number, they know the car, the colour, etc., etc. And all of those different elements, up to 250 different elements, could be brought in on the fly. Mm-hmm. So that you could then, rather than thinking, right, okay, my car's coming up with for renewal, they would be in, say, I don't know, Mercedes, BMW, whatever car it would be, Ford or whatever, would then be a picture of their car with their registration number, with their name on it. And they're now thinking, well, actually, these people really do know who I am. Yeah, and they do care what car I have. Maybe I ought to just give them a quick call. And I think that's the, it could be pink, it could be blue for a boy, pink for a girl, that kind of thing. And that's the way that they kind of really market it. And I think that's more clever than just putting a name and a salutation on it and being personalised.
Thank you, Andrew. Lee Stewart?
Yeah, I just want to perhaps let you know of a couple of campaigns in the way that we approach personalisation, because obviously when we sold our digital press, that was the new big thing about. So we approached a client within the motor trade, and we asked them to give us their database of all of their warranted vehicles. So anyone who's bought a car, they've got a warranty for 3 to 5 years. We then searched that database, refined it into all the criteria that there are. And then when a new model came out, we produced a postcard, which was, the title on the front of it was to Kelvin, for instance. On the inside, it said the model that they have and the model that they can now move up to. It directed them not to the head office, but to the actual dealer they bought their car, the vehicle from, rather than just a number and a phone number. And all the details all merged into the file as we printed it. We did about 13,000 of them and then mailed them out at quite a cheap mailing price, really. The client was so impressed because it only cost them the same as an advert in a main newspaper magazine, and secondly, he said dealers were phoning them up saying that people were walking in holding this, saying, I want this, because it's to them and it's directed them at the right time, at the right place. And that's how I think personalisation really works. Unfortunately, 3 years later, the customer got itchy feet and deleted all their data because of GDPR and hasn't managed to build a new database yet. And that's the big problem we have at the moment. No one seems to be able to build a big database with enough relevant data for that particular client, of all the ins and outs of their models they have. But then on the other hand, we also did an online one. Unfortunately, it wasn't printed, where we, for a large auction company in the motor trade again, and we merged the actual photographs of the actual cars, 4 different photographs, along with all the relevant information of that, and provided them with a PDF, which they then used as an online screen. Now, we didn't get to print it, but the principle was the same. And, I think it is about data, and it's about being confident you can collect the right data and produce the data at the right time.
Do you remember, Lee, your response rate to this original campaign?
Well, we unfortunately, because it goes to the head office, all the responses, and it goes to the dealerships, I wasn't given anything exact. But what he said to me was one particular dealer had 3 people walking in on the following Monday from us sending it, and we calculated that dealer had 100 postcards directing them to that dealer. So that's a 3% return rate in my eyes. I can't substantiate that with any other figure works, but he said it's a far, far better hit rate than putting an advert into a massive newspaper or magazine where you don't know what the rate is really. he was over the moon with it, and we did it for 3 years until GDPR hit, and they had to delete their data.
Well, and that actually brings me to one of my next questions. So now with all of the concern about privacy that's out there with collecting people's information and how you collect it and how old it is and validating, do you think that the concern of privacy is really going to affect how personalized pieces are printed now? So we have a client with us that it was a water sourcing company, and for whatever reason, they had to wipe out any personalized data from their customers that they had because of some sort of data breach. But they still wanted to send something out they still had our mailing list. So they wanted to do something that was still personalized. But like I said, they had the bare minimum data. All they had were names and addresses. So what we came up with for them was we took their address list, and they were opening a new, I believe it was a sanitation plant, something where they could have people come in from the community to learn about water and what they were doing. So what we did is we took the address list, and on every postcard was a personalized map from your home to this new location. So they were stretching as much as they could with the data that they were allowed to have. But now, like you said, with all these privacy concerns, do you think it's really going to affect, you know, what we can and cannot send out to people now?
Deborah?
Can I just, I'm sorry.
Hold on, Deborah was.
Thank you. I think it's really interesting because I think there's two tracks here. There is the personalization that people do to people, and then there's the personalization that people opt into, right? So when it comes to opting into kids, pets, you getting your something that you want, a calendar, people will send everything. They will log into everything. They will give you passwords. They will give you credit cards. They don't care because it's coming back with their pet on a calendar. But if you sent me a picture of my pet from my vet, I would be like, what? I mean, I might be like, why is my pet in there? There's a breach of something. So I think it really is up to whether people are initiating it or if it's being done to them. And then if it's being done to them, there is the creep factor. Not sure if you guys heard about the story that happened in America where Target, which is a big box store, sent postcards to a 16-year-old girl predicting that she was pregnant based upon her purchases. So they were giving her coupons for neonatal vitamins or something like that. Unfortunately, she was a minor, and her parents did not know that she was pregnant. And my God, that started a chain of no one's allowed to like personalize anything to anybody ever again into that creep. What they decided was the creep factor. So it's a very fine line, I think. But if you opt in, and if as people keep opting in, I think that scariness might go away.
Scott? Yes, please.
Yeah, the opt-in factor is a little bit of a joke in our country because everyone opts in when they do anything online. I mean, we work with a lot of printers who do political mail, and when you look at the Cambridge Analytics data, I mean, it would make you fall over if you knew the amount of data that Americans collect on each other and use that for whatever purpose they see fit, right? Whether it's right or wrong, you know, I guess, you know, the marketplace is the arbiter of that. But the idea of having data on people and personalizing and doing whatever you want, the sky's the limit. I mean, there are dumpsters of data out there on everybody.
It's a worry.
Can I ask a quick question to everyone? I don't know whether I'm allowed to, but GDPR, does that restrict now people? Say, for instance, we were talking the other day about obviously VIP guests are going to pubs and clubs or whatever. Does that now restrict us to what they can do to get people in through the door?
Happy to.
Jason?
Yeah, sorry. What a lot of people are doing, and it was following on the point, is to get around GDPR. Is you can look at your data that you've got. You can mail people, which is generic, but you've got to get them hooked to coming in. So you can send somebody a mailing, you can get them to log on to a site for a various offer, you can get them to opt in, and you can get them hooked in a campaign. And that's what a lot of people are doing. It's the generic mail that is either being used to get people hooked in, and then potentially you are online and you're getting online offers, or you might be getting more items in the post. But as they get more data from you, and as they get more information from you, they're profiling you even more until you opt out again. And then that's where you start again. So I suppose there's two areas of opportunity, but yeah, it's people are using generic mailings to get people enticed.
So so for instance, the GDPR limitations then essentially, look, we're talking about personalization where we're saying different images, your car, your number plate, etc., etc. Are you saying that wouldn't be allowed now then?
That would have too much information. So you would be able to use name, address, name, and then you'd have to get them to fill some more information in and opt in. Once they've done that, then you're happy to, you can do pretty much what you want. But it's that, how do you get them hooked in to start with? And that's where a lot of people are saying, well, can I use some cross-media tools? Can I use different ways? But I suppose the way that it's getting to is that, can I use print to entice people? Yes, you can. Once I've enticed people to come online, can I still continue to use print that's going to be more focused? And that's the point that it gets to, is that to get more focused and at a point in time where someone's going to be interested in something, that's when you use your data. And it's that full circle of, how do I get to my data? I've got to start all over again to start building the profiles up. And that's one of the big challenges at the moment. But you can use name and address to start enticing people.
All right, thanks a lot. Yeah, that's great. Cheers.
Lucy?
Yeah, they actually.
Yeah, sorry, Amanda, go on.
No, go ahead, Lucy.
I was just going to throw a curveball out there, following from what Jason just said, that even to entice people in to capture their data, you don't even need to use personalised print to do that. So 3 examples during lockdown where we've done targeted door drops, where the client didn't want to buy any data, wanted to nurture their own and collect their own organically. So we did, for a local primary school, not local to here, but a primary school in London, mild catchment, wanted play school age children that they wanted to recruit into the primary school. So we targeted various postcode sectors within a mile radius, inviting them to an online school virtual tour. And that's gone out to, I think it's about 45,000. They only need to recruit about 40 kids, and already they're starting to see the the conversions and collecting their own data. So you don't have to start with personalised print. You can start with a generic piece of print and curate your data from that, and then start the tailored communications afterwards.
Yeah, and I was just gonna to expand on that point. Something we've done for a client. We had a health insurance company that was one of our clients, and we in the States we have something called open enrollment, where everybody signs up for their health benefits in November. So what they did is they had us send out generic postcards to whatever sector that they were trying to get more clients in, and it was a generic questionnaire of what's your age group, what kind of health conditions are you interested in. And then the way that they collected the data is, if you filled this out and you did return mail and sent it back to us, we would send you a $10 Walmart gift card or a $10 gas gift card, and then we would take all the data collected and give it to this company. So then they would send targeted pieces to those based on what the answers were. So if you were a 65-year-old female who just had hip surgery, you would get information based on that. And when you give something away, people are very willing to give out their information.
So I was just
Jason.
I was going to add on to that. Okay, it's just an example of that, and it was what Deborah was saying is it was a pet food manufacturer, and they sent out a generic yes, you can win some pet food, but tell us about your pet. Tell us what breed it is. Tell us what's this, and getting that information and send it to us. To that mailing, they had a 45% response rate just to that. And what they managed to do is capture the dog, the breed, the age, what the vets. That's lots of information about it. But what they did is continue to market those clients. So they offered them the free food for some of the dogs, which they got. But they then were sending them postcards. Oh, it's your dog's birthday, or it's this and that. And we're always trying to keep that level of communication out there. And that became very, very successful.
That's interesting, because we actually did in an old company I used to work for that exact thing. It was for Petsmart, which is a large pet chain out here. But that's exactly what they did. And once they got that information back, they would send all of the next mailings you would get would have a picture of your breed of pet. And say, here we have dog food, or we have, nail grooming services for Fluffy, or, whatever it was. And it was highly successful for them.
Yeah.
Okay.
Is that all right, Marlon?
Yeah. I think Steve wanted to mention something as well.
I just want to explain a funny experience I had last December in John Lewis, right? I'm wandering around there, and I tripped over this guy with a machine that was foiling or printing on the lid of a Quality Street tin, right? And they had a big rack of different chocolates that go in the Quality Street. And basically, I bought this tin of Quality Street, choosing the ingredients in the shop, and he printed on the lid the name of the person that I was going to give it to there and then. So that was quite interesting, that even in a shop, they were personalising the product instantly. Mm-hmm. And as Kelvin will tell you, we did this kind of thing in our open house last October. Customer walked in, gave his name to Kelvin. 10 minutes later, he had a box with his name on it in gold foil, given to him full of ingredients. To me, that's pure personalisation. You're not canvassing the guy to do it. He is a willing respondent, like you just said about this pet food thing. So he's a willing participant, because you're not bombarding him with a load of mail and junk stuff that nobody wants really. It's just an irritation. But if you can dangle the carrot, as you said, for that pet food, dangle the carrot in front of them and get them to respond positively, now you've got a good communication and a good customer potential, because he doesn't feel like you've pressurised him, kind of thing, So that was an interesting experience. I've never seen that before.
It's a good one.
Yeah, I'm sure that you're right. That one of the key factors of personalization and personalized mailings and things like that, products, it builds up loyalty between client and the brand, which is very vital for for future. So definitely it makes sense.
Personalized. Sorry, I was just going to adding to what Steve said about the Quality Street. Personalized gifts. People are much more likely to personalize a gift and give that information over. And if you can find a really cool gimmick, I was actually writing about one yesterday. It was from Canada actually. So they weren't all asleep. They were doing something. It was a brewery called Best of Kin, and they come up with a greetings card. Effectively, it was a 6-pack of beer. So it was for the dad who has everything except a 6-pack, and you sent him a 6-pack of beer, which is genius. And you can personalise it, with their name and a little Father's Day or birthday or Christmas message. That is genius. Their database must just be massive now with people wanting that. So it's finding the right thing, Quality Street and 6-packs of beer, you're much more likely to sign up for than, your health details or your bank details. It's
yeah, absolutely.
Amanda.
Okay, so now I want to kind of do it onto the flip side. So is there an issue with people using personalization incorrectly in the industry? So I heard of, you guys probably heard of Tesla, the big car company over here. And one of their big promotions is, once you go in and it's a whole experience and you pick out your car everything you get in the mail or in paper when you're at the shop, you know, says this is your sky blue Tesla, and it always uses the adjective of what color, make, and model your Tesla is. So once you get it, you know, you feel very personalized. Well, once you've had the car for a month, they send you a little model car, you know, that you can put on your, you know, your mantle or something just to show that, hey, I bought this car. The one thing that they did is they only made one color of Tesla. So here you're getting all this information about your sky blue Tesla or your jet black Tesla, and you get a model of a red Tesla, not the one that you have. And it had, surprisingly, it had so much negative connotation, even though, you know, you're there to buy the actual car. You're not there for that little gimmicky toy, but it had so much backlash because they only made one red color. So have you seen...
You would think Elon could afford more than one color.
Exactly. Like as much as these people pay for a car, and some people, like, they even had some videos on that were vindictful against these little cars on YouTube, watching them being destroyed because they were so upset that they did not get the color, you know, the color of their car. So now, do you guys see in any of your markets that people are misusing personalization? You know, that is such, it seems like such a simple, you know, inexpensive problem that they could have fixed easily. Just make a color of whatever car the person actually bought. But it was something that small overlooked that created a huge negative wave.
Michael, and later Chuck, please. Michael.
So it was a piece I did at my last company. It was for a business that, you know, they would try and buy your home or property or whatever it is. So what they would do is take the address of the property, and it would pull the image off of Google Street View, you know, put it in the middle of there. So you'd get the envelope. It would have it right on the front saying, you know, hey, we want to talk to you about this property that you own. One of the problems, though, they didn't actually really check the address to see really what it was. So there were some of them where it would just be a telephone pole or a bush on the side of the road, or just like a wall, you know, because maybe the house is way back up a driveway or something, but they didn't actually look into that. So you're sending out this piece and someone's getting like a drainage sewer or something. And, you know, we tried to bring it to their attention. They're like, oh, well, it's probably not a lot of them. It was a fair amount of them. But they just, you know, said to push with it. I don't know what the actual response rates on those were, but I mean, you know, if I got something trying to buy property and it was a telephone pole, I probably would just ignore that. So to that point of misuse of data or not caring about the data.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Jacques Suriano?
You're on mute, Jacques.
Yeah, can you guys hear me okay?
Yes, we can, yes. Welcome to the pub.
Thank you. Thanks, Robert, for inviting me. I didn't have a question. Just majority of the direct mail that I do for my clients is typically fundraise based. Mm-hmm. So they do have a captive audience. They have a lot of the data. They have past giving. They have a lot of that information. So it's a little different to what I'm hearing here in the sense of I don't do a lot of commercial type direct mail, let's say. But I'm not that familiar, believe it or not, with GDPR, so I'm gonna have to read up on that and get myself more familiar with it. But just, you know, happy to hear what everyone has to say and learning quite a bit here. So thank you very much.
If you need to learn about it, Josh, it's going to be coming. It's coming to the States in one form or another. Obviously, it'll take a long time to get through Congress, but it's an issue that'll be coming because there's a lot of, frankly, valid points in GDPR. It's just that the restraints that were put on really changed a lot of business profiles. But the same thing's going to happen. I don't know if Scott's following it probably a little more closely than I am at this stage, but I know that it's there because the websites all have to conform. So,
just to comment on that, when I went through GDPR first, looking at it, how it affected me as a very small company. it took me a day and a half just to read through the government information on it to pull out what I needed to look at and what I didn't need to look at, and then prepare a one-page small policy, which I was required to do. And it was really arduous, because it's going through pages and pages of documentation.
Gareth, please.
I mean, at the moment we're talking mostly about marketing and direct mail, but personalization can be more than useful in the other way around. Go back to the Tesla or to cars in general. When you get the car handbook, you have tended in the past to get every possible combination of engine, gearbox, light fittings, radio, all that sort of stuff. But with personalization, that car manual can be matched precisely to that model as it goes down the production line. So the exact radio is the one that's in the handbook, which is then welcomed by the driver, because if they need to know how to turn it on or to change stations or something, they've got exactly the relevance to that particular station and that particular radio. It saves a lot of time. It saves a lot of money in print, because that car is not humping around a big book, but a much smaller book. Yeah. I think the first ones to do that were Range Rover, when they would actually stick a bit of the covering of your cloth on it when the DocTech first came out. And then you can expand that into your investments and savings and pensions. And again, instead of getting a generic report about everybody else, the global response and the global success of that particular pension fund, you get a precise, detailed analysis of your investment. So again, you're not wading through shed loads of data. You're getting precisely the data that you want. And there's a big difference, therefore, between personalization, which is a hit and miss and hoping to sell you something, and personalization, which builds that relationship with you and the customer, the brand and the customer, to the benefit of the brand and to the customer, because you're being treated as an individual, not as one of 100,000. I think that's, and of course it also saves some money. They're not wasting print, they're not wasting paper, which is going to become very, very important over the next few years. And it's a much tighter, much more personal experience, a concierge type experience, like going into a 5-star hotel where they know your name, as opposed to going into Travelodge where they have to look it up.
Thank you, Gareth.
Yeah,
David McGuinness?
All right. Yeah, Gareth, funnily enough, I booked my car in for a service about an hour ago. And on my phone now, I have an app called Mercedes Me, which comes with the car these days. And when you get in the car, it brings up a picture of me. It knows everything about me. And when I rang up the service station to get it serviced, she knew who it was ringing because she knew my mobile number. She greeted me with who I was. And they kind of know everything about me. And there's things popping up on my phone now because Mercedes know who I am. So you're absolutely right. And I'm sure it wouldn't take much to convert that into print, and I'm sure it will all come through in print. So, technology mixing with print again is one of those things. It's about capturing everything about that person.
Yeah, that's true. The channels in the States for both BMW and Mercedes are very good with the direct mail and the mobile app notifications for service. Gee, here's the new model. You've had it for 5 years. Don't you want to upgrade? Or your lease is up, whatever the circumstances are, that they have a reason, they'll direct mail it. Interestingly enough, both Mercedes and BMW have co-op programs for the dealers to do that. So there's funding available to them to support that kind of a mailing effort. And they also provide the databases, the processing of the data. I want to mention one thing and to jump in on this, because what hasn't been mentioned. Well, first of all, what was mentioned was the problem of some of the data, getting it, making sure that it conforms. That's a business opportunity. And both Jacques and I worked at a company that was one of the actually high margin services that we offered. Certainly putting ink on paper had something to do with it, but it's low margin, it's commodity. But cleaning up the data, making it hygienic and useful for the purposes of a particular program, there's big money in that, and bringing that kind of talent in isn't as expensive as you would think, or retraining somebody who's on the IT side of your company to do that kind of data hygienics is a big deal. And then there's software that can be used to make this kind of mailing valuable for people. In the States, there's something that the United States Postal Service offers called a National Change of Address. So there's programs that tap into that and make sure that things are all relevant in terms of what the address is so that it's up to date. And it makes your mailing a little more efficient in terms of what you're doing. So I think that there's a lot of revenue opportunities that sit with direct mail that aren't actually just the printing. But if you capture the data, it's very sticky for the client to stay with you, especially if you're good at it. And the company that Jacques and I worked at, that was actually the biggest deal. We stole a lot of work from Donnelly. We both hate that company now, but we took a lot of work from Donnelly. So anyway, I'm speaking for Jacques.
Okay, thank you very much. Lee Stewart, please.
Yeah, and I just want to add to what Robert was saying, actually. With the campaign that we did, one of the biggest problems we had was with the data. The data being captured over a long period of time. Some people have, the same person may have opted in and opted out of the item. They may have purchased lots of different models. They've just had different addresses. When we finally filtered it down ourselves, we had to send it off to the Royal Mail for authorization, and they came back and told us how good the data was. So many people had died, so we obviously wanted to remove those. Some people had known to be moved, but it's quite a long, complex method to get this data in a usable method to start with. And actually, the way that I think certainly with direct mail marketing print, it will be trying to work out how you get really, really good data. Particularly when they might opt into a website thing and then opt out to a competition mailer. Then have they opted in? Have they opted out? You have no choice but to delete them. You'll say, "What delete them?" You have to mark them as being opted out. And that's where the data managing of it. I'd like to know from Robert if he knows anyone in the UK who can do that really well, because I'd like to talk to them.
Thank you, Lee. Scott, you had your hand.
Yeah, I mean, Robert always has great points, and I agree with 90% of what he said there. The one thing I would kind of just caution people, and I see it all the time, because our company does the address quality aspect of some of these things, and what we see time and time again is the owner of the company or the people who are profiting off the business for this ultimately have functionaries that kind of get into that data, and they're like, well, let's fix it, and they're not monetizing it. They're not charging an hourly rate. They're not that analog is not going back to the client of how much work is being done on the data. They're just kind of doing it as goodwill. So there's two sides of that coin. It's absolutely necessary. Robert's right. If it's done correctly, it should be seen as a source of money. If it's not, it's a hole on your back end, just leaking profits right out of the organization if people are mindlessly spending time and not charging for it. So there's a little bit of a double-edged sword on that, and it really comes down to the quality of your data quality tools. But I'll leave it at that.
Okay, thank you. Kelvin, I think you were very quiet today.
Yeah, well, I'm doing the chat, and you're in charge with the lovely Amanda. My point there was, Lee, something you just said resonated with me. So during everything that's gone on, data is key for personalization. I think we can all pretty much agree to that. And having good data gives you great personalization. And on the back of that, there's lots of opportunities. Then in the situation we're in now, print has an opportunity with direct mail and moving forward. Who's going to police that data? How do we check whether those people are still okay or still around or still with us? After a pandemic that's affected tens of thousands of people, 45,000 people in the UK, that's got to be a job there for somebody. How do you check that people are still there with a DM campaign?
Well, the Royal Mail does have a database of deceased, because we certainly used it with the motor manufacturer, because the last thing we want to do is send it to someone who's died. So they do have a database. I don't know where and how they get to it, but the Royal Mail, actually, if you look into it, they are trying to do a lot more to supply that sort of data. But I don't know of any. I mean, there's lots of data people in the country, for instance, the ones that used to do your credit checking and stuff. They've got a lot of data about you, and they're starting to sell that data to marketing companies. But actually, I'm not sure how good and clean and actually how legal that is to use.
Because that's got to affect you as well, Elizabeth, hasn't it?
Sorry,
Elizabeth, that's got to affect you as well, hasn't it?
What, GDPR?
Well,
and
the
all
data,
the
the fact that so many people,
that go with it.
yeah.
Not really.
Okay.
Just purely and simply because, sorry about that, Kelvin. But yeah, just purely and simply because councils have a right, and because it's elections, it's part of a democratic process, the councils have a right to have that information, and you have to provide it to them because of that democratic process. It's not, you can obviously with the council, you can opt in, you can opt out to their marketing, to sort of just general newsletters that they send out, all that sort of thing. But that's a completely different element of the council's function. Elections sit under that umbrella, but they are ring fenced. They're kind of untouchable by the council because of the potential to interfere with democracy. So therefore, yes, they have a right, they have a legal responsibility to hold that data as well, to make sure that you are able to take part. So yeah, we don't really, although we are very, very hot on GDPR for obvious reasons, because of what we do in the security risks and everything else and so on and so forth. Because we do think globally, it's not just the councils that we deal with in the UK, but it is, you know, it's one of those things. It is one of those things.
Yeah.
All right,
I'm
thank you
about
very
to
much.
eat my raisins now.
Amanda, I think we have time to squeeze in one more question.
Okay, so I kind of want to go back to Gareth's point about the manuals within the automobiles. And the question is now, do you see a difference between highly targeted versioning versus personalization? So a tool that my company has created, a software tool, is where any company can go in and create their own web to print portal. So say it's for one of our health insurance companies does this for your enrollment book you get when you join in, you get your health insurance. Basically what they do is they create a portal where whoever is sending these out, the insurance salesman, can go in and just answer a bunch of questions like, what's your age group? What ailments do you have and all this? And you just get a smaller version of the large book rather than having a bazillion choices. You just get a smaller version of that book, but it's specifically targeted to you. Just as he was saying, you know, the automobile is specifically targeted to the automobile that you purchased. So now, do you see a difference between versioning versus personalization, or is it one and the same?
Well, I'll start then. I'll jump in. I think versioning is part of the web to print personalization. You can personalize different versions and save different instances. I just know about the solutions that are in the US and in the UK, and obviously mainly our solution, but we would say it's pretty much the same thing. You can have different versions of the same thing, and that could be data driven through data composition as well. So I'd say it's the same thing. I get what you're doing because we had a chat about it, and it is a different way of approaching it. We approach it from a completely different way where it is the same thing. So for me, it's the same thing.
Gareth, please.
Yeah, and there are companies in the UK doing exactly the same thing as Amanda's just described, where somebody fills in that information and you get the insurance policy with just the relevant sections that you need. And of course, that way you end, and it saves the insurance company a lot of money when somebody phones up and says, I want to claim under the insurance, and then they can call up the same policy up on their screen and say, well, you didn't actually buy that clause. It's not in your book. Mm-hmm. Whereas if you've just got the generic one, you can pretend not, and they have a lot of hassle with people saying, but I did say that, it's in my book here. Well, it's not relevant to you, so it's not in your book. But talking about version is, as I see it, is where you've got the affinity of a picture on the front. So if I'm being targeted, I get pictures of other pensioners on the front rather than pictures of people. So instead of pictures of happy families, because my family's gone, so I don't need pictures of happy families, that's not going to entice me. I don't feel part of the group that they're targeting. The group that I'm targeting now is the skin miserable git that sits down the pub nursing his pint all night. That's the one I want to see. That's the one that's going to make me think intuitively, yes, this is for me. If I'm seeing a picture of
happy families running across the sand, I'm going to say, well, that's not targeted at me. That's irrelevant to me, even though it's the same product. So that's what I see as versioning, either by age group and social class or whatever you like, or by location, or any other way of splitting it up and giving a slightly different message to segmented groups of people. It's not quite the same as personalization, but it's kind of heading in that direction, and it's not as creepy, even though it probably is just as creepy. It doesn't feel as creepy.
Gareth and everyone, it's possibly more subtle. If you're personalizing with data, even names and addresses, let alone specific stuff, that can be a bit big brother. That can be a bit creepy. If you're personalizing more with imagery, that's quite clever, because it's quite gentle, but like you just said, it can actually have really strong effect. And you can have groups of people rather than specific individuals. So it's more like versioning, which is possibly a cheaper way of doing it than personalization. I think it's quite you're trying to build trust. You know, you're trying to create a rapport and get a better response by building a certain amount of trust. And you can do that maybe easier with a few good images than getting someone's name wrong or a date of birth wrong. So I think you can be clever and make more use of that kind of stuff in print.
Yeah, good point.
I mean, I can give an example from a few years back. We were doing a conversation, a round table conversation on direct mail and catalogue personalisation. And we had Tesco's there, and we had Littlewoods there and stuff like that. And this is 5 or 6 years ago, and the data they had was already so good that they purposely put the odd mistake in and stuff like that. You know, they put someone they knew had a dog, they'd put some cat food in, or some dumb nonsense like that. But they would do it on purpose because they were so good at it. You know, it would freak people out a bit. So imagine what they're like now, because that was years ago.
Deborah?
In last year, I did this thing called Project Peacock, where I took a traveling print fair, and the year before to advertising agencies, brands, and spoke to the buyers and the creatives and the marketing people about the new things that they could do with print. And certainly personalization and versioning and customization came up. And in almost all of those 1,000 conversations with people who create the print, they have no interest in creating 5,000 different versions of anything and personalizing it. They don't want to deal with the data. They don't want to create anything that disrupts their workflow, but they love versions, because versions allows them to speak to different people, groups of people in a different way. For example, in the north of the United States, you would say you all if you were writing copy, but in the south, you could say y'all, which is a conjunction of that, which to Southern people would be more inviting and friendly and feel like somebody understood me. It's written to me. So there is subtle ways of versioning too that brands are really into because they can appear to be speaking to an individual, even though it's a big chunk of individuals.
Okay, thank you. Amanda?
Yeah, well, I was just going to add to that point. The reason why this health insurance company decided to do the versioning is because when they were sending out the books, like you were saying, images have a lot more effect than words. And they were putting just static images and sending it out to every single one of their health insurance buyers. Well, one of the images they did was a lady who was pregnant. And they found that a majority of the people who were not in that category threw those books away because they didn't think they were for them. Because, you know, they're not, you know, a 65-year-old man is not going to open a book that has a pregnant woman on it because it doesn't appeal to him. So that's when they did the huge market change and decided, well, let's do versions, you know, per the different groups that we have: young families, single people, you know, older, 65 and over. And I think they said it was about a 47% success rate on people actually opening and getting these books because it was actually targeted towards them. And it's not something, you know, they see and just automatically throw away.
Yeah, yeah, it looks like we have a good session again. I think we're approaching, an hour, so I think we're gonna be closing it down slowly. I think from what I get from you guys is the personalization and well, targeting properly. It makes sense in print industry, and it should be a way forward. We are at VPress. We are creating a little document to support this thesis and help everyone to understand what it can deliver. So thank you very much for coming. And next week we're starting on Tuesday with a guest called Kelly O'Sullivan, who is the head of Sainsbury's and Argos print purchasing. She spends millions on print every year, so I'm sure you'll be very interested in seeing her and having a few questions. And in the meantime, thank you very much. Amanda, thank you very much for taking controls over this session, and hopefully, guys, we'll speak to you next week. And have a good weekend.
Very interesting session. Thank you,
Amanda. Really good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Thanks all.
Great
Good
stuff.
weekend, everybody.
Thanks, Amanda.
Thank
Good
you.
job.
Bye.
Thanks, Amanda.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Robert, for your offer, and hopefully you'll find someone for me.
Well, I'm on holiday next week. I'll see you after.
Yeah, see you, Steve. Thank you.
Take care. Be safe.